You're feeling strong, your position is solid, and you've just finished your development after castling. Even better, your opponent hangs a piece. What a fool. You start wondering why you aren't rated 2000 ELO already. You shouldn't even be playing such inferior opponents. You capture, and then you realise your mistake. Your king is trapped behind its own pawns, and your opponent's rook or queen slides in on the back rank. It's simple, brutal, and punishes anyone who forgets to make luft for their king. This incredible checkmate is just one of the 15 patterns I'll show you in this video. Patterns that grandmasters swear will make your chess rating skyrocket to new, unknown levels. Anastasia's mate. A knight controls the escape squares while a rook or queen delivers checkmate along the edge. This pattern is really similar to the last one, but now it's the knight who creates that invisible wall. It usually happens when the king is boxed in by its own pawn or rook. For example, in this position, after the knight checks on e7, an imaginary wall is created with controlled squares. And after a brilliant sacrifice on h7, we can see the power of this pattern. Boden's mate. 2 bishops cut across the board, trapping a king caught between its own pieces. It's elegant. Diagonal power. In this example, we can see how the white king doesn't have much space, and how the white bishop takes away all his escape squares. After using the deflection tactic that we mentioned in our previous video, we are able to clear the path for our bishop to checkmate and win the game. Smothered mate. Usually, after a brilliant sacrifice, the knight delivers checkmate to a king surrounded by its own pieces. This mate is really common after a short castle and can help you win a lot of games. In this example, we can clearly identify the pattern. A knight ready to jump to f7, and a queen that forces the opponent to asphyxiate their own king. Beautiful checkmate. Arabian mate. A rook and a knight work together. The rook delivers mate, while the knight covers the king's escape. This is one of the oldest known mates in chess history. In this example, we can see how all the white pieces coordinate to deliver checkmate. First, a check with the knight that can't be captured. The king has to move, and then we sacrifice the queen, just to deliver the Arabian mate and win the game. Morphy's mate. The queen and bishop coordinate to trap the king on one side of the board. It's the checkmate from Paul Morphy's famous opera game, and it's still beautiful today. The game ended exactly like this. Morphy saw the checkmate and diverted the knight to put his rook in killing range. Lawnmower mate. 2 rooks, or a rook and a queen. Push the enemy king across the board, rank by rank.
Why are you running? Why are you running?
It's called the lawnmower because they cut the board clean. I'm sure all of you have done this one because it's the most common mate of all. But that doesn't mean you should ignore it. Legal's mate. White sacrifices the queen early, then uses the bishops and a knight to finish the uncastled king. This mate is really common when you have your knight pinned and the opponent believes you're stupid enough to give away your queen. You may even act upset after you move to achieve better results with this mate. For example, in this game, exactly what we mentioned happens, and after black captures, we deliver matey in 2. First, check with the bishop and then you finish with knight to d5. The king is checkmated in the middle of the board and the game is won in just 7 moves. Damiano's mate, Pedro Damiano, left us this simple yet elegant checkmate, where the key is the pawn blocking the king's escape. The idea is to trap the king with a pawn and finish it off with the queen. It often appears after a rook sacrifice on the h-file, luring the king out so the queen can move in for the final blow. For example, in this position we use the bishop just like the pawn. First giving a check because if you did it with the queen, the king would escape, then you follow the pattern and you win. Epaulette mate. The king is stuck between its own 2 rooks and the queen delivers mate from the front. It looks like the king is wearing shoulder pads, hence the name Epaulette. It's common, believe it or not. The most famous example is this game from a 13-year-old Magnus Carlsen, where after checking with his queen and with a little help from his rook, he won brilliantly. Dovetail mate. The queen delivers mate from the front, while the king's own pieces block its diagonal escapes. This pattern is symmetrical, like dovetail joints. I feel like this mate is quite easy to understand, so I'll give you 3 puzzles. Feel free to pause and put your answers in the comments if you want. Swallow's tail mate. This mate is the son of the Dovetail and the Epaulette mates. You have the queen delivering mate, supported by a piece, and a black king that can't escape once more because of its own pieces, normally 2 rooks. For example, in this game, we can see how white gives up material, trading a rook for a bishop. But what black doesn't see is that he's falling right into our trap, the swallow's tail mate. Because after he moves his knight, we can deliver checkmate. Hook mate. Checkmate with a rook, knight and a pawn along with 1 enemy pawn to limit the enemy king's escape, forming a fictional hook that traps the king and kills it in a beautiful way. For example, in this 2000 ELO game, BUFM Diana Mirza finds this mate with rook to d8 and then finishes with the pattern. It's also cool to see that if her opponent had gone the other way, he would have ended up with the same fate. Blind swine matey. 2 rooks invade the 7th rank together, trapping the king with nowhere to run. They're called blind pigs because they eat everything in their path. It's quite common to see this in the middle game or end game, and it has given me a lot of wins. In this example, the queen gives space to the rooks, who start devouring everything black puts in their way, ending as usual in a checkmate. Corner mate. The king is trapped in the corner, surrounded by its own army, and your queen or rook delivers the finishing checkmate. It's one of the simplest, yet most common mates in real games. Openings like the Scholar's Mate use the same idea, and even if it's a simple mate, a mate is always a mate. This is the end, but before you leave, I just wanted to thank you for all the support I've been getting in the comments. I'll try to upload a video every Monday, but I'm afraid it won't always be possible. And remember, this is Chimpawn Chess,